Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have another great show for you today. First on the docket, an update on the efforts to locate Nancy Guthrie. We have a trial set in the matter of Luigi Mangione. A fraternity hazing turns fatal. A domestic dispute gets deadly. A drug dealer finds out that guns and drugs, well, not a good combination. We've got this day in legal history, our legal quote of the day, and our dumb criminal. Let's talk about it.
Lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, hit that little bell for notifications, and you can check us out for the audio version on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, before we get to the docket, let me remind you to go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription service today, and check out the people coming into your life. When you sign up, you can do as many background searches as you desire, and the report is literally prepared and sent to you while you wait. Think about it. Somebody coming into your life. I don't care if it's a repairman, the guy coming over to fix the pool, gonna mow your lawn. Check them out, all right? Because when you do, you're going to get a report, and it's going to have all types of information, social media information, email addresses, phone numbers, criminal history. Are they married, divorced? Do they have liens, judgments? Are they on a sex offender registry? Everything you want to know about people that are coming into your life, or even more importantly, coming into your home. Ladies and gentlemen, it could potentially save your life. Go to crimetalksearch.com. You're going to be happy that you did. All right, let me go ahead and open the record for Thursday, February 5th, 2026. And we have the latest on the Nancy Guthrie matter. The FBI confirms there's an arrest in the deceptive ransom scheme. That's right. So the investigation into the abduction of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie, has now reached its sixth day, with federal and local authorities intensifying their search while addressing fraudulent attempts to exploit the situation. Law enforcement officials have confirmed that Miss Guthrie was taken against her will from her high-value home in the Catalina foothill areas during the early mornings of February 1st of 2026, prompting heightened concerns regarding her medical needs, and she lacks access to her required daily prescriptions. Now, during a press conference on February 4, the Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos outlined key investigative developments. Forensic testing identified blood found on the property's porch as belonging to Miss Guthrie, with further evidence from the scene undergoing analysis. The resident's security camera system ceased functioning at approximately 1:47 a.m., but motion sensors recorded activity at approximately 2:12 a.m., suggesting possible interference or unauthorized access. Indicators of a forced intrusion include an unlocked front door and activated interior lighting consistent with an abrupt or coerced exit. At present, no specific suspect or individuals of interest have been publicly identified, as Sheriff Nanos noted that the investigation is ongoing and inclusive, with no one ruled out. Detectives have spoken with an Uber driver who transported Miss Guthrie following a family gathering on January 31st, verifying her home return without incident. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, was the final person confirmed to have seen her, assisting her entry into the residence. Now, the FBI has assumed a collaborative role in the case, announcing a reward of up to $50,000 for tips, resulting in Miss Guthrie's safe return to the prosecution of those involved. Now, in the February 4th update, FBI Special Agent Heath Jankel appealed directly to any potential perpetrators, emphasizing the critical nature of the matter, saying, quote, "This involves an elderly grandmother dependent on essential medication for her health. There remains an opportunity to rectify this before it worsens significantly." End quote. And on February 5th, during a subsequent news conference, Agent Janke revealed that one arrest has been made in connection with a false ransom demand, and a formal complaint is scheduled for presentation to a magistrate judge later that day. He further cautioned those attempting to capitalize on the tragedy that such action would be thoroughly pursued and prosecuted. Several alleged ransom communications have emerged, including one directed to TMZ requesting payment in digital currency, and another sent to a local television station, KOLD, which included non-public details about Miss Guthrie's clothing and property condition. Mary Coleman highlighted that the message contained confidential elements suggestive of insider knowledge, along with a stipulated sum and time frame. Investigators are actively assessing the validity of these claims, employing digital tracing methods such as IP address analysis. Now, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe has observed that the lack of verified dialogue with the family may indicate that these are not authentic demands from the actual abductors. Now, the Guthrie family, comprising Savannah and her siblings, has issued a public plea for the captors to initiate contact and further confirmation of Miss Guthrie's well-being. In a recorded message, they conveyed their willingness to negotiate, saying, quote, "We require unequivocal assurance that she is alive and in your custody. We are prepared to hear your terms," end quote. Now, Sheriff Nanos has expressed confidence that Miss Guthrie is still alive, asserting that their assumption is that she is viable and their priority is for her safe recovery. Nevertheless, health professionals have advised that her state could decline swiftly without her medications. And this incident obviously came to light when a fellow church member alerted the family to Miss Guthrie's non-attendance at a service at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, though records show that she had been attending remotely since the onset of the COVID-19 era. Now, family members reached out to her at her home after 11 a.m. on February 1st, finding her absent from her personal items such as her phone, wallet, medications, and car intact. Data from her Apple Watch indicated a loss of connection to her pacemaker around 2 a.m., correlating with the presumed time of the abduction. Now, President Donald Trump has directed federal resources to support the effort, offering national encouragement, and the nation stands in prayer for her and her loved ones, the president stated. A vigil held at the St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church on February 4th attracted more than 400 participants, demonstrating obviously a lot of community support. Now, colleagues of Savannah Guthrie on the Today program have acknowledged the significant public response, noting its value in challenging circumstances. Now, police continue to stress that Miss Guthrie's fragility due to her age and health requirements, characterizing the abduction as deliberate rather than opportunistic. The public is encouraged to share any information with the FBI by calling 1-800-CALL-FBI or the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900, or you can give a tip anonymously through 88crime.org. Now, we are going to see, obviously, how this develops in the next couple of days. Probably this should be resolved one way or the other in the next couple of days. I think the police are not telling us everything that they know. They're getting close to solving this case. Let's hope so. I am one to believe that it's just a little too convenient that somebody just happened to abduct an 84-year-old woman. I don't think that that is completely random. It doesn't usually happen that way. I think somebody familiar with the residence, who she is, may have had something to do with it. Now, I don't know who it could be. Could it be the garbage man? Could it be the gardener from across the street? Who knows? We don't know. Look at the people who would benefit from Miss Guthrie's demise. That's, I think, you'd have to look at. But we'll keep bringing you the latest when it breaks on the Guthrie matter. Next, how about Luigi Mangione? Got some trials coming up. So in the other high-profile case that has obviously captivated public attention, Luigi Mangione, the 27-year-old Maryland resident charged with the killing and execution of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, faces impending trials in both state and federal courts. Prosecutors are advocating for an expedited state proceeding to precede the federal proceedings, highlighting the urgency of delivering justice for a crime that disrupted one of New York City's busiest districts. Federal proceedings against Mangione are scheduled to commence with jury selection on September 8th of 2026, followed by opening statements to begin about October 13th. Now, this timeline assumes the elimination of the death penalty as a potential sentence, as the decision affirmed by a judge last week. Should the capital punishment remain an option, the trial could be delayed until January of 2027, depending on if the prosecution appeals the court's decision, striking the death penalty, saying that stalking isn't an enumerated crime of violence that is required for the death penalty in the federal case. As you may recall, the state court judge also eliminated the death penalty, stating that it doesn't rise to the level of violence that would warrant a death penalty, at least not under the statute. The state's not appealing that, so it's going to go forward. Either way, Mangione, if he's convicted, is looking at life without the possibility of parole. Now, remember, everybody seems to love Luigi Mangione, and of course he's given the presumption of innocence, although other than the gun found in his backpack and his confession in his diary, somehow he is seen as a hero to many because he killed somebody who just happened to be, well, the CEO of a healthcare organization. I'm not sure that rationale makes a whole lot of sense. Killing is wrong. And this was just a cowardly act in and of itself because, well, Mangione allegedly shot the CEO in the back, for God's sakes. That is cowardly indeed. If that was the police shooting somebody in the back, everybody would be outraged. But because Mangione apparently has good looks and is young and somehow appeals to everybody that thinks they need free health care, he is some sort of hero. Let's see how that all goes down in trial. Anyway, meanwhile, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is pressing for the state trial to begin on July 1st, arguing that New York holds substantial interest in swiftly addressing the murder. And in a recent filing, the district attorney emphasized the need to uphold public order and the right to life, noting that the brazen act instilled widespread fear in the community. He further contended that the federal law supports prioritizing the state case to avoid compromising a timely resolution. Now, as you can probably imagine, Mangione's defense team has deemed the proposed July start date impractical, citing the extensive preparation required. And one of the attorneys stated that the team anticipates needing the full year to ready for the federal trial, which already has a confirmed schedule. Now, the defense is also challenging evidence obtained from Mangione's backpack, including the alleged weapon and personal writings claiming violations in the search and arrest process. Now, remember, the federal court already denied the defense's motion to suppress the evidence. The state court has not ruled on it yet, but it will be denied. And of course, this all relates to his arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Now, like I said, the state judge has shown receptiveness to proceeding first, dismissing concerns that it would unduly prejudice the federal trial as speculative, and a hearing is set for tomorrow, Friday, in the New York State Supreme Court, where a decision on the state trial date may be issued. Prosecutors have indicated readiness to move forward once evidentiary matters are resolved, with a ruling on the motions to suppress expected sometime in early May. Obviously, Mangione remains in custody, detained at the federal detention center in Brooklyn. And as both jurisdictions navigate these parallel paths, the case underscores the complexities of coordinating state and federal prosecutions in a matter of national significance. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, the reality of it is, it's not that complicated of a case. My God, I get it. Listen, as a defense attorney, oftentimes you want to drag things out, right? That is the strategy when you've got nothing. I'm giving you the inside baseball scoop here, ladies and gentlemen. When you got nothing, you delay. You come up with reasons. Oh, it's so complex. Oh my gosh, it's so busy. My schedule, busy. Okay? When you got nothing, you delay. If they had something, if they thought they had some smoking gun that they thought was going to help walk their client at trial, they'd be like, let's go. And I've told you, I got 9 not guilties on homicide cases. Like, walk out the door. Not like, oh, they found guilty of second-degree murder. Don't even count those. 9 not guilties on first-degree murder. Walk them out the door, okay? The key common thing is you go early and you get in there as quickly as you can within speedy trial. Why? Because the prosecution never expects you to be ready to go within that 6-month window. And sometimes you just can't do it. But if you can and you got nothing to lose, you go for it. And I'm telling you, that's the way to do it. They got nothing. Mangione's got nothing in this particular case. The evidence is not going to be suppressed in the state court. The federal court has already denied it. Like I said, they've got his gun in his backpack that was seated next to him at McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. It's got his little notebook with all his planning and consciousness of guilt material as to his escape and eluding police. This is not a whodunit. Let's get for real, ladies and gentlemen. And if the defense had something, they would have brought it out by now. They got nothing. They're delaying. I know the Luigi Mangione crowd is going to hate that, but that's reality, ladies and gentlemen. You know, you want somebody, I'm sure there's somebody that'll tell you Luigi Mangione is innocent, which will give him the presumption of innocence, but there's overwhelming evidence against him. So let's get for real. Next on the docket, little fraternity hazing turns fatal. So in somewhat of a distressing case at Northern Arizona University, police have arrested 3 fraternity executives after an 18-year-old prospective member succumbed to severe alcohol intoxication during an initiation ritual. The Flagstaff police were called to a residence on January 31st following reports of an unresponsive individual where emergency efforts failed to revive the young man, who was later declared dead. Investigators have secured a search warrant and, speaking with those present, determined that the incident stemmed from a hazing activity involving excessive vodka consumption designed to induce vomiting among pledges. Charged individuals, all aged 20 and holding leadership positions in the Delta Tau Delta chapter, include Carter Eslick, Ryan Creech, and Riley Cass. They face allegations of hazing, defined under relevant statutes as compelling someone to ingest substances posing significant health risks. Witnesses recounted that the group researched symptoms of alcohol poisoning online after noticing the victim's abnormal breathing around 3 a.m., but no immediate aid was sought. The fraternity's national leadership has condemned such practices as contrary to the principles of camaraderie and has imposed temporary suspensions on the local branch pending an internal review by the university. Anyway, you know how that's going to come out. Just stupid. Listen, I was never in a fraternity. I guess the fraternity I was in the military. And yes, they had hazing things that they did. But it was never to, make you drink so much that you were going to pass out and die. Obviously, these kids probably didn't do that, but guess what? It's all fun and games until you, as the adult, in this case, even they're minors, contribute to the delinquency of a minor by giving them alcohol, and it's all fun and games until somebody dies or gets in a car accident or goes to the hospital because they're so intoxicated. It's just stupid, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I don't want these young men to have their lives ruined, but they certainly need to have some sort of punishment, not only just to deter them, but to others in the future that, well, you can have fun, you can create camaraderie, you can haze, all right? I'm not against hazing. It's a part of life, okay? It's part of life. It builds character, it does. But getting somebody so drunk that they die, that's just stupid. That's not hazing. That's not good fun. That's not building camaraderie. Next on the docket, a deadly domestic dispute or self-defense. What do we know? A Texas woman has been detained on murder charges after fatally shooting her husband, claiming the act followed years of warnings and a recent physical altercation. So on February 1st, the Wise County Sheriff deputies responded to an emergency call from the victim's father, who accused his daughter-in-law of homicide. Upon arrival at the home, officers encountered 45-year-old Sandy Michael Williams on the porch, who surrendered without incident. A search revealed her husband, Michael Thomas, dead from several bullet injuries. In her statement to police, Williams described a 3-year marriage marred by tensions during which she had explicitly cautioned Thomas that any physical aggression would prompt a lethal response. She alleged that an argument escalated when he seized her hair and hurled her down, after which he ascended the stairs. Williams then armed himself, pursued him, and discharged the weapon multiple times. She openly admitted her aim was to end the situation permanently, expressing hope that the shots would prove fatal. Well, guess what? She's now charged with a single count of murder, and Williams remains in custody as the case proceeds through the legal system. Now, those are always tough cases, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, dead guy should have been taught by his father, you never, ever, ever hit a girl. Ever. Never. I don't care if she, whatever. You don't do it. She's bigger. She hits you first. It doesn't matter. You never, ever hit a girl. You never hit a woman. Bottom line. Okay? Taught that to my son from a young age. He would fight with his sister and he would hit her. And I would say, you never hit a girl. And he'd say, well, she hit me first. And I said, you never, ever hit a girl. And that was it. End of story. You don't do it. Now, in this particular case, this woman may have some problems, okay? The threat, it seems to have dissipated to the point where she didn't need to use deadly force at that particular moment. Remember, you can use deadly force when at that moment you are in fear of death or serious bodily injury, not when that fear has gone and now you're just pissed. It doesn't work that way. So she's got some problems, some good mitigation, probably going to prison for a couple of years, hopefully not life, maybe a decade and a half, probably the going rate on, killing wife beaters in that particular situation. But you can't go around just killing people because you're still angry. Just the way it is. Next, an Indianapolis man finds out that guns and drugs just don't mix. That's right. Following a federal trial, a 33-year-old resident of Indianapolis has been convicted on counts related to distributing controlled substances and unlawfully holding firearms, despite having a prior felony conviction. Wow. And I thought that just the fact that you have a felony conviction, you can't possess firearms, would be deterrence enough. Apparently not. Anyway, Deontay Williams was found culpable by a jury for dealing fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine, along with possessing an array of 8 guns prohibited to him as a repeat offender. That's right. That's what they refer to as felon in possession of a firearm. Prosecutors from the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Indiana presented evidence of seized contraband, including roughly 40 grams of meth, not a huge amount, 30 grams of cocaine, not a huge amount, and 80 grams of fentanyl in various forms, amounting to approximately 800 potential doses. Once again, not a big amount, but the guns really complicate it for this young man. The firearms confiscated were a Delton AR-style pistol, an American Tactical AR-style pistol, a 12-gauge shotgun, a 28mm pistol, a Smith & Wesson .38 special revolver, a Rexio .22 long rifle firearm, and a Glock 9mm pistol with a Springfield 9mm pistol. Anyway, which would be fine if he didn't have drugs and he wasn't a prior felon. Anyway, Williams' criminal history includes convictions for assault causing injury to a minor under 14, unauthorized entry into a residence, that's called burglary, and illegal gun ownership by a violent felon. Now, during the law enforcement probe, they discovered images of him brandishing weapons. Notably, he received a 34-year state prison sentence in March of 2025 for a separate methamphetamine distribution offense. Sentence for the current federal conviction is pending. Like I say it all the time, ladies and gentlemen, I love guns. I do. I'd like to think I have a small arsenal, but the reality of it is, as I tell my clients, they complicate everything. So if you're going to use them, well, first of all, don't be a felon and don't have them around drugs. Don't commit a crime with them and only use them as a last defense. Next to the docket, this day in legal history. On February 5th, 1778, South Carolina became the first state to ratify the Articles of Confederation, marking a foundational step in the establishment of the United States' initial governing framework. On February 5th, 1917, the United States Congress overrode President Woodrow Wilson's veto to pass the Immigration Act of 1917, also known as the Asiatic Barred Zone Act, which imposed significant restrictions on immigration from Asia and introduced literacy tests for entrance. And then on February 5th, 1937, President Franklin D. Roosevelt announced his Judicial Procedures Reform Bill, proposing to expand the Supreme Court to as many as 15 justices in response to rulings that invalidated key New Deal legislation. This controversial court-packing plan ultimately failed, but influenced subsequent judicial shifts. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is why I've always said Franklin Delano Roosevelt, one of the worst presidents ever. I know some people say he was elected 4 times. I get it, but that's now why we have term limits on the presidency. But he didn't get what he wanted, and so he threatened to pack the court. Sound familiar? Where have I heard that recently? See, ladies and gentlemen, every bad idea has already been tried. That's why you have to study history. Anyway, court at the time said, well, we don't want you to stack the court. So they started compromising and saying, yeah, even though it's not in the Constitution, that the federal government should be able to do what you want to do, which is basically all these job programs and welfare programs. That should be to the left to the states. The court said, fine, we'll do it because we don't want to pack the court. So they were a little bit of cowards as well. Because if you read the Constitution, there's like 9 things the federal government should do, right? National defense, interstate commerce, immigration, borders, post office, patents. Other than that, it's very limited what the federal government's authority is. Everything else, 10th Amendment, reserved to the states. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, worst president ever, threatened to stack the court, created the social welfare state that we have today. Next on the docket, how about a quote of the day? How about we give FDR his retort? All right. Yes. So in his fireside chat on March 9th of 1937, addressing criticism of his Judicial Procedures Reform Bill, President Franklin D. Roosevelt remarked, quote, "If by that phrase, packing the court, it is charged that I wish to place on the bench spineless puppets who would disregard the law and would decide specific cases as I wished them to decide, I make this answer, that no president fit for his office would appoint, and no senator of honorable men fit for their office would confirm that kind of appointee to the Supreme Court. But if by that phrase the charge is made that I would appoint and the Senate would confirm justices worthy to sit beside present members of the court who understand those modern conditions, that I will appoint justices who will not undertake to override the judgment of the Congress on legislative policy, that I will appoint justices who will act as justices and not as legislators. If the appointment of such justices can be called packing the court, then I say that I, and with me, the vast majority of American people, favor doing that thing now." End quote. There you go, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So we give him his retort to my critique. There you go. And next, our dumb criminal of the day. In the sun-drenched expanses of northeast Florida, a romantic rift has escalated into a carnivorous caper, culminating in the arrest of a man whose impulsive thefts proved as ill-conceived as they were perishable. Police have charged 30-year-old Hennessy O. Alvarez Reyna with felony retail theft following an audacious spree that saw him liberate nearly $4,000 in premium cups from the local supermarket, only to consign them to oblivion upon heartbreaking discovery. Surveillance footage, as detailed by the Flagler County Sheriff's Office, captured Alvarez Reyna's methodical maneuvers. First, he allegedly absconded with $1,500 in beef and lamb from one Publix location, a haul fit for a feast of epic proportions. Merely 20 minutes later, he struck again at a neighborhood store, securing nearly $2,000 in pork, sirloin, brisket, tenderloin, and an assortment of personal care items, perhaps an attempt to cleanse both palate and conscience. The plot thickened, however, when, upon interrogation, Alvarez Reyna confessed to jettisoning the entire bounty. His motive? A drive to his girlfriend's home revealed her in the midst of a culinary collaboration with another gentleman, transforming his stolen spoils into a symbol of spurned affection. And one can only imagine the sizzle of irony as prime meats met the unceremonious end. Sheriff Rick Staley, ever the wordsmith in law enforcement, offered a poignant reflection. While his romance might have soured beyond salvage, pilfered provisions offer no remedy for real woes. The inescapable truth remains. Those who plunder our provisions will face apprehension and the full weight of justice, ensuring they encounter the stakes of their actions. Anyway, as a Cuban national, Alvarez Reyna now resides at the Sheriff Perry Hall's inmate detention facility, detained on a $5,000 bond, along with a hold from the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Division. Stark reminder, ladies and gentlemen, that in matters of the heart and the hearth, haste often leads to waste, particularly when it involves high-value steaks. What a waste of meat, ladies and gentlemen. Beef is expensive. To waste it, to throw it out because you find out your girlfriend is cheating on you, leave her and go have one hell of a barbecue. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.